Hello and welcome to Back to School Night. This is Trigonometry with Mr. Satz. My name is Andrew Satz, and I have been a teacher at the Yale School for 8 years. This is my 9th year here. And I have been teaching Algebra 2, Trigonometry, and Pre-Calc and Calculus here the entire time. When I first got here, I set my sights on rewriting the curriculum to accommodate for all of our social learning activities that we provide throughout the school year. Yale School is an amazing place where students are able to get the help that they need with their social skills. And as I've explained to the students in the past, social skills are the most important thing in life. Especially with this population that I'm working with in trigonometry, they're incredibly bright and incredibly good at math. However, they believe that because they have great skill set, that they're also going to be successful. And I need to explain to them, and they need to experience for themselves, that the social aspect of life, the ability to communicate effectively with other people and to work well with others, is way more important and way more valuable than their ability to solve trigonometric equations. So while math is certainly my focus, the social component is our school's overall component or focus. So because of that, I had to rewrite the curriculum to adapt to less time for math instruction. So because of that fact, Algebra 1 is not the fullest Algebra 1 class that you might find at, say, a district school where their focus is not social learning. Because of that, some of the Algebra 1 skills moved into Algebra 2. Because of that, and because of our social learning component, some of the Algebra 2 skills have moved into trigonometry. The way that I treated it was Algebra 1 and Algebra 2 are typically seen as, well, Algebra 1 is a graduation requirement, Algebra 2 is sometimes a district requirement. So I made sure that in Algebra 1 and Algebra 2, students were getting all of the basics that they really need to leave high school knowing. Once they get to trigonometry, they start learning what I would consider to be elective math type things, where we're going to be solving logarithmic equations. If that doesn't make any sense to you, that's why it's in trigonometry, because these aren't skills that they're going to need for life. These are specialized math skills. So if they're in trigonometry, if they take pre-calculus or calculus, they're getting a more specialized math education there. So because of that, some of the topics that you're going to see in here, you might not expect. You also might be thinking, when do they do this, or how are they going to do that? And I'd like to go over those topics with you right now. So bear with me as I present my trigonometry curriculum. All right. So you might recall from Algebra 2, if your student had me for Algebra 2 last year, that we actually ended the year with factoring polynomials. Because factoring is so important, you might remember me talking about that last year in the Algebra 2 back to school night. We start the year with factoring polynomials, and we go through an in-depth review. For students that remember factoring polynomials, I start every student off with a practice quiz to see what they remember. And that goes for anything that they might have gotten in Algebra 2. I'm constantly changing the curriculum, constantly updating it to accommodate for our population and our schedule changes. So we go through factoring polynomials, but again, students who believe that they remember factoring polynomials are given a practice quiz first to see how they do. If they do well on the practice quiz, they get fast-tracked right to the quiz. So a number of students this year were able to take just a number of days, 3 or 4 days maybe even 1 or 2 days to get through the entire unit on factoring polynomials, because it is designed as a review. So if students remember it, we can go faster. The second unit is rational functions. We work on simplifying and graphing them, along with these strange force fields that I call asymptotes. Well, I don't call them asymptotes. I call them force fields. They're called asymptotes. And again, this is how this course is going to go. There's going to be a lot of strange words like asymptotes and radical functions and rationalizing denominators. And that's why this course is above Algebra 2, because they're going to get a level of math education now that most people will never need in their lives. But if students are interested in a STEM field, these are absolutely necessary skills. In Unit 2, we go over rational functions with the asymptotes. That's a very challenging unit. We have just finished that with most students, although a few of them are still in it. I'd say about half of them are out and half of them are in. And by out, I mean past it. We then go on to radical functions, and a lot of this would typically be found in Algebra 2 curriculum. So you're seeing that we're studying all these different functions, rational functions, radical functions, exponential and logarithmic functions you can see as Unit 4. Those are also usually taught in an Algebra 2 class or maybe in the beginning of a trigonometry course. We're actually going to use the first half of the year to go through all 4 of those units right there. And the reason that they're in trigonometry is, again, they had to be pushed from the Algebra 2 into trigonometry due to our social learning component of our school, which is #1 priority. They're still incredibly interesting and mathematically valid functions and equations. So if they're going into a mathematical field or have an interest in math, this is why they're getting it in trigonometry and not in Algebra 2. Again, every unit has a component of solving equations as well as graphing those types of functions along with stretches, shifts, all of that good stuff that you would find in any trigonometry or Algebra 2 class. Once we get to the midterm, though, we switch to trigonometry as our unit of focus. And you might be wondering, well, how come you do 4 units in the first half of the year and 1 unit for the second half of the year? This unit right here, Unit 5 trigonometry, is incredibly packed tight with a lot of good information. But I build it from the ground up also. Students were supposed to have been exposed to right triangle trig, which is that first topic in trigonometry, back in geometry. But again, our curriculum has a lot of social components in it, and we lose a lot of instructional time due to those social components because, again, that is a higher priority than knowing how to solve trig equations. Because of that, I don't assume that they got that in geometry, and I do it again here in trigonometry. If students already know how to do this, I have a number of students that already know how to do this, and I'm sure I know that at this point. I can actually name 2 off the top of my head. They would take the practice quiz if they believe they can do it. If they do well on the practice quiz, and by well, I mean 80% or higher, they would then take the quiz and they can fast track themselves through a lot of these topics. Now, it kind of stops right there at that A because they have not seen any of this other stuff before. I did work with a couple of students over the summer on the unit circle, and I think I worked with a student last year on the unit circle as well. So there are a couple students that might have these things down, and then they can be fast-tracked through A through E and get to these topics right here, F, G, H, and I, which are incredibly challenging, and I don't always get to them in one school year. So one of my goal is for all students to get to the unit circle. The unit circle is particularly of interest to me because the unit circle is what held me back in my college years from getting A's in my math classes. Because I didn't know the unit circle, and because a lot of college professors will typically put trigonometry in their calculus class, if you end a problem with the sine of pi over 4 but don't know its value because you don't know the unit circle, you lose points. So because of the fact that calculus has a heavy component of trigonometry in it, I wasn't able to get A's in my math classes at college. So I set out from that day forward to make sure that any student that I taught trigonometry to would understand the unit circle after someone finally explained it to me and it made sense, so that I can make sure that every student that goes on to calculus can do well and get A's in it. If you guys have any questions or concerns, the easiest way to reach out to me is by going through your student's homeroom teacher. However, if you want to get in touch with me directly, you can email me using the same format that you would email the homeroom teachers using, which is my first initial, which is A, my last name, which is Satz, S-A-T-Z, at yaleschoolnj.com, and I'll get back to you within 24 hours. So if you have any questions about how your student's doing, you could always check real time in the gradebook. If you have any concerns about what's going on in my class, feel free to reach out to me directly or through your student's homeroom teacher. I look forward to working with your student and teaching them the highest level math that we offer in this school.